I can't put a number on how many cases I read while I was in prison and thought, how could they have found this person guilty? And usually the cases were murder, and usually the sentences were life without the possibility of parole. Through reading these cases and learning the law, I've inferred that our judicial system is set on a conviction rate, a number, a statistic. The more people that are found not guilty, the less conviction rate. It always comes down to judges want to be promoted to the next court, district attorneys want to be promoted to different offices and then become judges, and there's no accountability. When a person is then found wrongfully convicted, and it takes a long time to go through the appeals process, because when you appeal your conviction, you go before the same judge that just sentenced you, and most likely they're going to deny you. And then the Superior Court, and in Pennsylvania there's so many appeals courts because we get it wrong so many times. And when it is discovered or learned that a person was wrongfully convicted 10, 20, 30 years later, the judge and DA who made sure that they were going to be convicted aren't penalized. I don't even think they're notified. Imagine a company or a business where you make an error and there's no repercussions. In fact, you're not even apprised of your mistakes. This isn't McDonald's that I'm talking about, and it's not a cheeseburger, hold the tomatoes, that was messed up. These are people's lives, and people who have families and children. There's somebody's father, somebody's mother, somebody's son or daughter are in prison right now serving the rest of their life, and they're innocent. A lot of them too can appeal. Pennsylvania has a 1-year time limit to appeal from the time that you're sentenced. Imagine being wrongfully convicted and then having to go through the intake process through one prison, which sometimes can take 5-6 months. Actually, I've seen it take up to a year. You get to your home jail, you have to get situated. You want to learn your surroundings, who you're with. Sometimes you get put in with a cellie where it's combative right off the bat, and sometimes you end up in the hole. And in that time, you're supposed to learn the law. You're supposed to learn your rights, what errors were made, and how to appeal, how to file an appeal. It's impossible. There are advocacy groups that are trying to make a difference for things like this, and they don't even get compensated for the time that they were in prison wrongfully. And if you feel bad about that, then that means you're human. And there's nothing wrong with that. And these advocacy groups you should look into then and advocate for this with them are the Jeffrey Discovic Foundation, and it could happen to you, I believe. And you can look them up. And the bills that they're supporting, that I believe they came up with, that would provide compensation for these wrongfully convicted cases are SB 54 and HB 545. And this case right here, this is Pat Mccamey. I met him, he was actually my cellie in 2020, right before COVID hit. I had the time to read his case, and I did. And a short synopsis of what I concluded was the police, the detectives, sort of coaxed this 19-year-old co-defendant into admitting or saying something that wasn't true. You'll see and you'll hear Pat say they were going to buy 2 ounces of marijuana. He set it up for the night before. He ran into this guy, said he'll come by the next morning, and the guy who he met has a history of acting out violence, which wasn't allowed to be presented to the jury. And they argued because he believed that Pat had done something in the past, and Pat had accused him of doing something in the past, and the guy came out with a knife and tried to stab Pat. Pat puts him in a headlock as he's trying to stab the 19-year-old, and the guy continues to stab back at Pat. He gets him in his femoral artery, which he had to go to the hospital for because he was leaking blood so quickly. And Pat said his intent was to put the guy to sleep. That makes sense to me. I mean, if somebody's stabbing at me, I'm not just gonna allow it. I don't know what the detectives would have expected this guy to do. Yes, they're in the wrong for buying marijuana, which is now legal and never should have been illegal, but they go on to say that Pat's intent was to go there and rob him. Pat didn't go with any weapons. He brought his own money, and if you know anything about robberies or drug addiction, they didn't even touch the drugs. Pat knew exactly where the drugs were. He's been there before, and he knew how to get to it. It was just in that door right there, adjacent to where they went down at. He went into the house then and got something to make a tourniquet for himself to stop the bleeding. Without the actual story, certain things could be indicative of a robbery or a drug deal gone wrong. But when you actually examine it, when you think of the whole scope, which is what we should be doing, that's not what happened. That means Pat shouldn't have been charged with murder. And then that means Pat shouldn't be serving life without the possibility of parole. And same with that 19-year-old. The court shouldn't treat these trials like a game of chess. It should never come down to a conviction rate. That's not what we should be boasting in our counties, in our state. When you compare that to the wrongfully convicted, what's the sense? What's the point of it? It's not worth it. This is Pat Mccamey's story.
Who goes to a robbery with a pocket full of money?
Or who goes to a robbery without a weapon? You know, like if you're planning to go and rob somebody, you're going to take a weapon. And I mean, it's in my, before this case, I literally had I think like 13 different rifles and shotguns and hunting equipment that was registered to me, like it wasn't like I didn't have, guns. If I was planning on going there to rob them, I would have took a gun with me, that wasn't the thing. What the hell is that, Rick?
What, that?
Yeah.
The security cameras?
Oh, that's what those are? I seen something moving up there in the corner. I'm like, what the hell is that?
Just set off the alarm.
Oh, it does?
Yeah.
But anyhow, the whole thing is, and they know that me and him was, that we were acquaintances for it says it in there in the initial statement that I gave to the state police. It says about, we know that he's been into selling, weed and drugs for years. And the state cop even told me that he's been convicted of selling drugs. I said to him, listen, man, it wasn't it, I feel bad it happened. I've known him all my life. I said, I went there to get a couple ounces of weed and,
Pat,
things went bad.
Start from the beginning. Act like you never told me before. Because
yeah.
And the fact that you pre-ordered something and then that was still there.
So I see the guy prior to the night before, and I see him coming off a road. It's called Brent Road. You can see way down the road. So I hurry up and I turn on to Brent Road and make him stop. And I said, yo, let me come and grab him, them 2 ounces tonight. And he says, nah, I've been drinking, come and see me in the morning. I said, listen, I got to work. I said, I got the masonry company. They're opening up the gates. It was on a Sunday. That's why I had that kid with me. He was going to help labor for me that day.
Your co-defendant.
So, yeah, my co-defendant. So he said, I'll be ready. So when I get there the next morning, I told the kid to wait because I knew how Bones was. But he just lived right up the road. So he didn't want me to have to stop at the store twice. So he's sitting on my porch. My dogs are going crazy. I said, what are you doing here? He said, oh, well, I didn't want you to have to stop twice. I'm out of cigarettes. So I said, oh, hell, you can just ride with me. he gets mad because I have the kid with me. That was what set the whole thing off. And I said, you know what, Bones, listen, if it's going to be a problem, we'll just leave, And he says, well, just hold on. I said, well, let me get a gas can for him to walk down the quick fill, and because I needed it for the partner saw for cutting brick. I said, let him get a gallon of gas. And he's like, well, use the beer can out there. And I'm like, come on, Bones, quit messing around. What's the problem? And for one, he wasn't ready, so I was mad. I was worried about that being on time. So he comes out and he goes to the back of the truck, and he goes to gets the gas can out of the back of his truck, and he sets it down in front of the kid, and he says to the kid, listen, or the kid said, damn, Bones, I don't know why you're getting all worked up. He's like, my mom and my brother. And he looks the kid in the face and he says, listen, don't get shit fucked up. Don't think you could ever come back here. And the kid gets mad. And he goes, as Bones walking in the thing, he says, he's like, oh, man, the hell with that old head. He's like, I'll take his shit. I said, oh, man, chill out. Go get that gas or something. And I even asked him after the fact, why didn't you just go get the gas? He said, oh, you didn't give me no money to go get gas. So Bonesy comes back out and stabs him initially. And that's when the whole thing started. We start fighting back and forth, and I had the knife in the hand. We fall down. I come up behind him, put him in a chokehold. We start wrestling around.
He stabs you or him?
He stabbed him first for saying what he said. He come out of the house and stabbed him first. That's what initiated the whole thing. So when he did that, I come up behind him and had him like in a headlock, and he's swinging a knife behind him, like trying to stab behind him to get me. And that's when he catches me. When we fall down along the garage, he falls down and catches me in my leg, and he stabs me twice in my leg.
And
the second time,
did he hit that artery?
Yeah, he nicked it.
The
remember we put that in my appeal, yeah. And I said,
remember.
The first time he stabbed me, I didn't even know it really. But the second time, I felt that come clean up to the bottom of my head, like it went clean up my spine, like I felt it that time.
Felt it rattle your bones?
Yeah. So once I got the knife and I'm banging his hand on the sidewalk and it breaks, that was all. That was it, man. I once I knew he didn't have the knife, I was trying to put him to sleep. I was trying to eliminate the situation. I wasn't trying to kill the man. I wasn't trying to do any of that.
He was just struggling. He was fighting him.
Yeah. So I thought I choked him out. I mean, as kids, man, how many times have you and your buddies choked each other out or hyperventilated and pushed on each other's chest? And, so, I don't know. I thought I was like Bruce Lee or something or whatever, but that's all I was trying to do, man, was choke him out and figured I could get up and leave. But once I got up and I realized and I stepped on my foot and I could feel the blood in my boot. And there's blood everywhere, like a 3-foot circle. I did walk in his house. I walked in his house, and the evidence that they have shows exactly what I said I did. I did. The footprints show I walked in, went to the left, put my foot up on the chair, grabbed a rag. I've known the guy forever. I knew where everything was in the house. So I grab a rag, I tie it right below my knee, because I don't know exactly where I'm stabbed. I just was like a tourniquet type thing. And then we leave. When we leave, the kid said to me, damn, man, how long does somebody usually stay knocked out when you do that? I said, I don't know. And let's go. And we walked away and we went to the vehicle. And that was the story of it. There was no robbery. Even in my things, the only thing they said to get the second-degree felony murder is they said unknown items of value was taken. They don't know what was. They've never been able to prove anything was taken.
Because nothing was taken.
I mean, nothing was taken.
You can literally just say that in any case, in any situation. Something was taken. We don't know what. But something.
What made them say that is my co-defendant, okay? When they did, you got to understand, the kid's 19 years old.
And he has a learning disability, you said.
Right, yes, he definitely is slow. So they take and they interrogate him, and they tell him, because I got his transcripts where they interrogate him. They said to him, "Listen, we don't want you. We want Mccamey. Are you sure that it wasn't his idea?" Or wait, first they after that they take a smoke break and they leave the room, the interrogation room. Then they come back and they start and they tell him, they say, "Well, listen, is it, that it's not you, but this is your only chance you're going to have to make anything right here. Somebody died. And are you sure it wasn't his idea to go there and rob or burglarize this guy, since he was older than you guys? And maybe, is that what went on?" And he said, "Well, yeah, it could have been. Yeah, I guess that was it." And they used that right there by him saying, "Yeah, it could have been." The cop come out and said, "Oh, I got you now, Mccamey, I got you."
All right. Now, they used the fact, they said you went there to rob him. And when I read all your paperwork, I seen it was the victim Bones, his past history, his violent tendencies was omitted from the jury, right? Like that wasn't allowed.
Yeah, they wouldn't let his mental health come in to this. He got Social Security. He got Social Security for being, crazy. He got he hasn't worked. He had they said it was from a car accident injury, a head injury that he had back in 1970.
But that wasn't allowed in the court.
That wasn't allowed. They filed a motion to keep that out, and his criminal history wasn't allowed to be brought up, because if his criminal history would have been brought up, it would have proved exactly what I was saying, and that's why I'm saying with my lawyer not letting me get on the stand, it was no way for them to tell what the real story was without me being on the stand and telling them, "Hey, listen, because this is what happened. I've known this guy my whole life. We've sold drugs together. That's what we did." His sister even got up there in the sentencing and said, "This is a sad situation. I'm losing a brother, but, his kids is losing a father, and, this is the lifestyle they chose," and asked the judge not to give me a life sentence.
You didn't have a criminal history, did you?
No, not really. No, I had receiving I bought a jumping jack tamper and a skid steer, and it ended up being stolen from West Virginia PennDOT. But it was all returned, and I just paid a fine, and it wasn't. I mean, I had dumb things like DUI. I had
nothing
DUI.
violent.
I had paraphernalia.
And no robbery.
No robberies. I think I did have an assault charge one time, or a simple assault. But simple assault, when you think of that, anytime you put the word assault in there, people think, "Oh, he did something violent." No. Yeah, it can be just cussing at your neighbor is a simple assault.
Did they use that in court?
No, because they couldn't, because I didn't get on the stand.
Right.
That's why my lawyer wouldn't. He kept telling me not to get on the stand, and I said, "I don't care about that." Yeah, I said, "I don't care. They're getting ready. If they convict me, I'm gonna do the rest of my life in prison. They need to know what." And he said, "Okay, well, we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it back at the jail." And then the next day we come in, and it just went on. And I'm like, "Yo, well, what happened with testifying?" "Well, I told them you didn't want to." When they had the sidebar that morning.
I remember it now. I remember reading that.
Yeah.
All right, but one of the things that stuck out to me, Pat, was that the police and the DA said that this was a planned robbery, premeditated, and that, your argument was that you had pre-ordered 2 ounces of marijuana. That's what you were going to pick up before you went to work. The DA is basically saying that there was no pre-order. He was planned this. He was going to rob him. That in the evidence list, there's 2 ounces of marijuana, and all of his drugs and stuff were still left there. I mean, if you're going to rob somebody, that's what you would take. I mean,
there was actually 2 out. There was a brown paper bag, like one of them, and a inside of one of them plastic grocery bags. There was a whole bag of weed. But there was digital scales with 2 ounces of marijuana weighed out besides the other marijuana they found.
Right.
That's the part that I said to, like, like, how can you not, how do they not believe this, Randy? Randy's my lawyer. How do they not believe this? Like, they literally, I told them, the keys, if I was wanting to rob him, the keys to his garage was right there. I've known the guy my whole life, man, my whole life. If I knew where everything was in there, I
And
would have picked the keys up and I would have went in.
the money, it said that you didn't go with any money. There was money found basically on your walk back to your car. That, sort of, leads me to believe, well, should anybody to believe, that you brought money to buy the marijuana. I mean, you obviously didn't leave the money there because you didn't take the weed. So you had your own money,
they said that was the money I stole.
Right. And there's just no way to prove
to use that, right.
Either way.
Right, the difference. Right. There isn't.
But common sense, if you went there to rob somebody and you smoke weed, you're taking the weed, especially if it's right there.
I've known the guy all my life. My kids called him Uncle Bonesy. His nickname was Bones. My kids called him Uncle Bonesy. Like, I had no thought, no inkling. I would have never, even if my co-defendant said, hey, let's take this shit here, I would have said, no, we ain't taking nothing, man. That ain't what that wasn't the why I went there. That it had nothing, that was never in my mind, ever. The whole other thing that they never brought up is, I don't know if you know this or not, but where part of the argument also, I forgot to put this in there, part of the argument started also about, he tried to rape my 3 kids' mother. She went there one night to do something, grab something for me, and the lights were off, and she ended up, he was drunk, and she ended up just punching on him and shit, and he didn't get to do that, but that was his intentions. So he thought when a year prior to that, he started bringing up the fact about his garage being
I do remember
broken
that.
into. Remember that?
There was bad blood from a year ago, so that's why.
From a year, you're right.
So that's why he was.
I said to him, right, and I said, why are you bringing this up again, Mike? Like, that shit was over. Like, I don't even want to think. I don't even want to get started on that. Again, that's like, that was part of his. Once he started arguing about why I brought the kid there, he was like, yo, you know better than to bring somebody here, and then he brought that up too. I forgot about that. So they wouldn't bring that up either, in the courts. They did use that I was thought of being the suspect when his garage got broken into a year and a half prior to that. But what they didn't bring up is I was on house arrest for a DUI then. And I was, they did come and question me about it. And I said to the cops when they came about that, because he thought, he did think that. He thought I had something to do. I said, yo, listen, I've been in house arrest for the last, 40 some days. I said, I still got 45 days to do, So they knew that I didn't have nothing to do with that. I wasn't there because my bracelet said that I was at my residence the whole time. So, but yeah, I don't know, Rook.
And another key factor in this is the police know that this guy is a drug dealer. He's a known drug dealer.
He's been convicted of it several times.
And he's crazy. He acts out. But
yes,
in the courts, the district attorneys, they want to portray him now, though, as some sort of like a saint.
He's actually been convicted, and he literally had a charge that he was getting ready to go to court with that he didn't get to go because he ended up getting killed. But this happened, and but he had charges right then pending against him. He's had 3 or 4 DUIs, and every time he's been pulled over for a DUI, he's gotten possession with drugs, possession with drug paraphernalia, possession with the intent to distribute. Yeah, they've known he's, and they even thought he was a suspect in a in a homicide over a guy by the name of Timmy Saloon that was killed, years ago prior to this. So they know he wasn't no saint, and I know he wasn't.
The knife used came from his house? Was
Yeah,
that?
it was his. It was in his hand. The blade was broke off of it, from me slamming his hand down on the sidewalk, but the actual knife was still in his hand, and underneath the body when they found the body, when they noticed he was there laying there dead, that when they went and the paramedics and they flipped him over, he still had the knife in his hand. He definitely was the aggressor, and I just I mean, I still go to the law library here. It's a little harder to get to the law library here, but I was just over there the other day, and I don't understand how why it takes so long to get something like this. I was reading cases at 32, 27, 21, 36, actually I even read one 42 years, it takes to get a wrongful conviction overturned in Pennsylvania. Why? Why does it take that long?
All right, let's talk about your appeal, because the last I remember when I left, I drafted that habeas corpus for you. So you started out with your PCRA or direct appeal? Your direct appeal, right?
Right, yeah, direct appeal.
All right.
Then I filed my PCRA.
What year was that? What year did you file your appeal? What year were you convicted?
2015.
So
2015, 2014, yeah, 10 years. I come upstate 2015. I think I was convicted in 2014, but yeah. But the thing is, with that appeal, Rook, I filed my PCRA in 2018. I went back on writ in 2018 for an evidentiary hearing, okay? Then we did all that.
Pat, because you
what's that?
You went through the direct appeal process first, right?
Yeah.
So your
I went through
PCRA was timely then because you were on a direct appeal.
Right.
And they denied
all my
that.
stuff, I've kept it all timely. Yeah, I've kept everything timely. And then we filed that HABE. And then since I was here, they came back and tried to say that I needed to prove like due diligence, that I was just wasting their time by filing appeals or extensions of time, because when I filed for the extension of time to ask to amend, that the issue that I asked to amend, I never even spoke about, and I just reiterated what was already in my initial, and that I just added to what I already said. Like I was wasting their time to give myself more time to make a case better. And I said, well, that's right, because I'm I'm a layman in the law. I don't know the law, so it does take me longer, and I only get an hour and a half
in the law library
each time I go to the law library. Well, here you get 2.5 hours actually. You get 2.5 hours 3 times a week, and if you are on deadline, you can get 2.5 hours 4 days and 1 evening, so you can get 5 times. You can actually get a lot of time here.
Well, a lot of time comparably to what, Pat? Because a lawyer and a judge and a clerk,
compared to other prisons, I'll say that. Yeah, compared to other prisons, Somerset does a fabulous job in getting us our law library.
I'm glad to hear that.
They have a nice one. They have an annex library, law library, and then they have the big law library in the back of the library. Okay, you can go. There's a little one in the front, and then the one in the back. It has all the books still. It has anything you ask. Yeah, it has LexisNexis, and it's I don't know why here, but it's updated here every month. So I don't know why it wasn't at Housedale, but here they update it every month.
Yeah, I remember at Housedale waiting for the update.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be like that. They do it every month here. It tells you when you walk into the Lexus update, and it'll tell you what day of last month it was updated.
So where's your appeal at now? What?
I filed that what you did, and I responded to their telling me that it should be denied. Saying that I
An
didn't have
R&R?
no due diligence. Yeah, and I'm just waiting for them to respond to say what they have to say about it.
All right. Make sure you don't let that go untimely, Pat. Keep it going.
What, the report and recommendation?
All that. When you get a report and recommendation, object. And then the magistrate then has to rule on it. They adopt the R&R, which they usually do, object to that. And just keep it going, right, because the goal is to try to get you some sort of like assistance. And remember, even after that, you file to the Third Circuit Court of Appeals.
Right.
And then the last step is the United States Supreme Court.
And all my other issues in here, I think I've done very well in keeping that going with staying timely,
Yeah, a lot of people don't.
So, yeah, there's a lot of them that don't. So, just as far as he's young, and like I said, he has
your co-defendant,
mental issues. Yeah, but still, that should be I can't imagine just having sitting back and not doing nothing, like a lot of these, but they, here they have treadmills and workout machines and stuff on the block. So they just pacify everybody, that's all they don't want nobody to fight it.
Yeah. They have PlayStations there?
No, they do not have that. They have them over in the gym. You can sign up. It's a thing that they do all day long. There's a PlayStation room over there where there's like about 8 or 10 of them set up in a room where you can sign up and go over there and play for 2 hours. So
people, when you get to prison, who thinks about appealing? It's like you don't even realize that your rights were violated until you hear somebody in the yard talking about it, or you'll hear somebody say, yeah, they did this to me and that's why I'm in the courts, and then you think, well, yeah, they did that to me. They weren't allowed to?
Yeah, they did that to me. Yeah. Right. Yeah, because everybody just assumes that it's the judge, it's a DA, it's a lawyer, that they're not going to do nothing wrong, right, that they're upstanding citizens, and they're not, they're out to get a conviction, and they don't care what they got, there's 3 guys alone on my block right here. One's got 23, one's got 27, and one's got 31 years that they're involved in that shit with that in Philly, where they're getting ready to get overturned. The one guy, the victim's father, literally got on the stand and said, yo, listen, that guy ain't the guy that killed my son, but he was definitely there. And they were pointing to the guy that now, 23 years later, is a wrongful conviction. Like, they're saying, yo, like, he's innocent. He had an alibi. He had everything. The Innocent Projects is in on his case and all that.
Something seriously wrong with our courts.
Yeah. And there's another one that he got 27 years in. He's the one that I told you that wrote all the books in here.
I messaged him.
It could happen to any of us. Who, Crocker?
I messaged his family.
Yeah. He's a good dude, man. Really good dude.
Anything else you want to say about your appeal or your case?
Nah, that's pretty much it. I just wish, that, like we've always said, that there was a better way to go about this, and I'm not saying that I shouldn't have been punished for what I did, or the situation that happened, but I will say that I shouldn't have received a life sentence for it. Granted, what went on, if I wasn't doing the if I wasn't involved in the drug style of life with smoking weed or doing pain pills and things like that, and I wasn't involved in any of that, and I would have just been worrying about going to work that day, not worrying about going and getting 2 ounces of weed, I know none of this would have happened. So I'm not saying that I shouldn't have been punished somehow, but there's no way that I should be punished for the rest of my life for it, because it just I wasn't that person out there, I wasn't out there selling drugs, I wasn't out there doing this. I was out there. I was a father. I worked every day. A matter of fact, I worked probably more than what I should have because it caused a lot of problems with relationships with the kids' mothers, and but like I used to say to them, that you wouldn't have the things you have if I didn't work the way I did, and I always used that. And I drank, so I mean there's a lot of things that I should have did different in my life, but still I don't believe it deserves a life sentence. And that's about it. Like it definitely they should have looked into it a lot further. And I believe that it was more political over the lady that was becoming a magistrate judge. Whenever all this happened with my case, you can go back and you can look in the newspaper clippings and stuff, and you can see that they didn't talk about my case. All they talked about was Mary Odom, and Mary Odom is the district attorney that prosecuted my case. She was right after that became the district magistrate judge.
One last thing, Pat, and I know this is I don't want to bring this up, but I think it's important for people to understand the people you've lost while you've been in there.
The people I've lost, well, I've been in there. My father, my daughter, my cousin, my brother. Yeah, that's another thing, that it. I don't even know how to say it, Rook. Like,
You don't have
I
to
never
say much.
thought
I
I'd be
just
able
wanted people to know.
to get over something like that. But I know that it definitely changed, it made a different person out of me by having to deal with that. And maybe that's the, part of, I guess, what the road is that I guess I was meant to, endure while I'm in here. But yeah, that's the other thing with a wrongful conviction, because I believe that if they would have treated this correctly, I definitely wouldn't have. I believe I would have been out there before my father or my daughter had passed away. My daughter just passed away September 29th, or September 27th of last year. So I would have definitely been out there for that because I got 12 years in. I mean, I don't know how much time they want me to do for a self-defense situation, and
But they
I
want you to
believe
do the
that's
rest
what
of
it
your
should have
life.
been. Well, yeah, but I mean, as long as I got breath in me, I'm gonna keep fighting, no matter what. And I'm thankful that I have guys like you and
I'm gonna
guys
fight
like
too, Pat.
Crocker and stuff, and I'm very thankful that somebody like you figured it out and continued to do what you said you were gonna do once you got out there, So
I know there's some good dudes in there, man. Just like there, and I say that not all judges, district attorneys, or cops are bad, but just like there are good people in prison, there are bad people in uniform, and there
yes.
are good people in prison.